Hey, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm doing Christianity or Paulianity. Yeah, I made Paulianity up, so sue me. I like making up words. Um, okay. Uh, so Paul was the first person to write about Jesus. And he never says that Jesus came to him in the flesh. Um, and I don't know whether Jesus was a real dude or not. And even if he wasn't as portrayed in the Bible. Uh, but at any rate, Paul was a misanthropic train wreck of a human being. And the Jesus portrayed in the Bible was a little bit nicer, arrogant. We'll get into that later. The Jesus as portrayed in the Bible was arrogant, no doubt about that. But he was a little bit nicer. You know, God so loved the world, blah, 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 blah. And Paul was more about, you're a sinner and you deserve to die and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah. And we've got 7 books or letters, rather, of Paul's that have been confirmed. I think 7, 6 or 7. We've got nothing of Jesus, if he in fact existed at all, right? Okay. So the first, aside from Paul, who was the only person in the New Testament to have had a chance of actually meeting Jesus in the flesh. Paul never says he met Jesus in the flesh. He said that it was the spiritual vision that he had. But Paul wrote in the 30s, I believe. And maybe into the 40s. Not quite sure. We'll get into that later. Not tonight, but later. Okay. So the first gospel that was written was Mark. And that was written about 70, I think. Somewhere around 70. So we've got Paul, who is writing in the 30s and 40s, and we've got the first gospel, which was Mark, that was written in the 70s, maybe the 60s. Um, so, um, so what does that say? Well, let's just, for sake of argument, let's just say Jesus had been a real dude, okay? For sake of argument, okay? Let's just grant that hypothetical for sake of argument. Um, Paul presents Jesus as a real douchebag. I'm sorry, he does. That's because Paul's a douchebag. I mean, I guess, if you're a douchebag, you really can't portray anybody else any differently, right? So, so let's think about this. Paul presents Jesus as a douchebag because Paul's talking about sin and death and how you deserve to die for all your sins and, really piling on the guilt and, you know, and then we've got the Gospels, first of which is Mark, maybe in the 60s or the 70s, right? So let's say that Christianity had an image problem, or rather, Paulianity had an image problem, right? All right. So Mark decides he's going to clean up Paulianity and he's going to make a nicety nice version of Jesus. Now, since Mark is the first gospel written, it's the least supernatural. In fact, the last 11 verses, I believe, of Mark weren't original to Mark. Not sure when they were added, but they were added later. So there wasn't a whole lot of supernatural shit going on in Mark. Then the next gospel that was written was Matthew, I believe. And then we have Luke. And then John. And John is not a synoptic gospel. John is like an outlier, you know, and is the most supernatural of the gospels. So, when John was written, and I can't remember when John was written, I think in the 100s. Hang on, I'm looking it up. '93. John was written about 93 AD. Though the earliest found documents from John are from 125 AD. And it says here that John himself died in 44 AD. And of course, John didn't write John. That's a misnomer. So yeah. So about the time John was written, you can see Christianity evolving into this movement where Jesus has claimed to be the Son of God. We don't know that for sure. Like I said, we don't know that Jesus actually existed. But putting that aside right now, let's grant the hypothetical that Jesus existed, right? Okay. So we've got Jesus claiming to be the Son of God. Now, Jesus, if he existed, never wrote anything. So we don't know what he did or did not claim. We only know what other people say he claimed. So that's, do with that what you will. Could be a figment of people's imagination too, you know. But, I'm perfectly willing to grant that there was a Messiah figure named Yeshua. There were plenty of Messiah figures running around at that time. There were plenty of Yeshuas running around at the time. And there were probably plenty of Messiah figures named Yeshua that were crucified. I'm willing to grant all that. Doesn't mean that particular Yeshua existed, you know. Yeshua was a common name back then. Messiah figures were a dime a dozen. And Rome, hey, Robert, Rome liked crucifying people. I mean, come on. Can't sugarcoat it. So, anyway, so we've got a douchebag named Paul. Oh, come on, Robert. You've seen me before. And, maybe whoever wrote the Gospels were like, this does not look good for our movement. We've got to soften this up a bit, because, I mean, all you got to do is read Paul. And you can tell he's a douchebag. In fact, he's probably one of the biggest douchebags that ever lived. And so maybe the people who wrote the Gospels saw that and they're like, yeah, we kind of need to soften this up a bit, you know. Um, so the Christianity of Jesus is a lot softer than the Paulianity, and yeah, I made that up, of Paul. But we've got a bunch of things here. On the one side, we've got Jesus saying all of this shit about turn the other cheek, go the extra mile, yada yada yada. And on the other, we have Paul the douchebag saying you sinned, you deserve hell. No, no, Robert, not in that region. So, yet somehow we've got 7 authenticated letters of Paul. 6 or 7. I'm pretty sure it's 7, but it might be 6. Not sure on that one. Um, 6 authentic letters of Paul. And then we have 4 gospels. Now, when the Council of Trent was called, they probably thought, the council did, the Council of Trent, it put together the canon, of particularly the New Testament. And they probably thought all the letters that were purported to have been from Paul were from Paul. Now, at that time, it wasn't considered um, pseudepigraphas were common in that time. So it wasn't like anybody was breaking the law by saying, hey, this is Paul, you know, and sending that to a church. You know, it wasn't like they were plagiarizing, because there wasn't any plagiarism in that day. Well, I mean, it wouldn't have been plagiarism either, but you know what I mean. And it's just like, um, taking a well-known, you know, like it's illegal now if I took the name, if I don't know whether she's still alive or not, Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, it would be illegal if I presented myself as the Harper Lee who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. But back then it wasn't illegal to pass yourself off as somebody, basically. And so there were a lot of pseudepigraphas, but maybe the Council of Trent didn't know that. And they thought the pseudepigraphas were from Paul. So we've got 13, I think, letters purportedly from Paul in the New Testament. And so they put 13 letters from Paul in the New Testament. Think about that. But they only put 4 Gospels. Think about that. Now, wouldn't you think that the central figure of Christianity, which would be Jesus, would be more important, would have more ink than Paul? Think about that. Not only that, but when I was a Christian, a lot of what we studied, a lot of what we quoted was from Paul, not Jesus. Kind of odd, don't you think? Christians are supposed to be worshiping Jesus. They sing praise to Jesus, We're not even going to get into the God or not God, because I don't believe that God exists, but we're not getting into that tonight. Or this morning rather, because it's like almost 1 a.m. here. So it just, why would they include more of what Paul had to say than what Jesus had to say? If the religion is really Christianity and it's centered on Jesus, don't you think that they would have included more on Jesus? But they didn't. We know more about Paul than we know about Jesus, if he existed. And like I said, think about that. Think about that. Hey, Brian. Alrighty. So, yeah, I mean, I think Christianity should change its name to Paulianity. I really do, because they teach more than anything else, more than the teachings of Jesus. The church teaches the teachings of Paul. Maybe not the Catholic Church. I don't know. I haven't been to many Catholic services. I've been to a few here and there, but you know, I haven't really been to a lot. But it seems to me that they revere Paul more than they revere their Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It's kind of sad, to be honest. Yeah, right, Brian. Kind of sad when the central figure, the the supposed central figure of your religion has less focus on him in your holy book than Paul does. And remember, Paul wasn't even an original disciple. I can't really say it's done, it's over with. That part of the past is, we can't get it back. But it makes me wonder, it really makes me wonder if Paul was the real founder of Christianity and not Jesus, if he existed. It makes me wonder because, like I said, the Christians, they're going to quote Paul more than they quote Jesus. And we know more about Paul than we know about Jesus. We just do. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on, you know, I honestly, I had to think about that for a while. Why why is Paul mentioned more than Jesus? I mean, Paul claims to be writing, you know, in behalf of Jesus, but come on. Come on, dude. You expect us to believe that? I mean, those of us who have the blinders off. You expect us to believe that you're writing for Jesus. Uh-uh. Uh-uh. Don't work that way. Does not work that way. And we also have Paul's influence in the book of Luke and the book of Acts, because whoever wrote Luke and Acts was actually a disciple of Paul. So we've got Paul's influence in Luke and Acts also. Yeah. Yeah, it was. As well as the Q source, which we don't have anymore. I guess that's why they call it the Q source, because they figured out there was a common source between Matthew, Mark, and Luke. So, yeah, I mean, why don't you change your name, Christians? Why don't you change, why don't you come out, and be honest? Say you're Paulinians, because that's basically what you are. You're not Christians. You're Paulinians. I've been atheist for, I don't know. It took me a while to figure out that I was an atheist, you know, and I don't know when it wasn't I go to bed Christian and I wake up atheist. Christians think that, you know, well, you know, one of the things Paul says is if you're not for us, you're against us. That's one of the big things that the Christians say, or the Paulinians say. Maybe I should start calling them the Paulinians. I don't know. I'll probably still call them Christians, just, you know, so I don't confuse anyone. But yeah, Christians, why are you dedicating yourself to a lie? All you have to do is read your fucking book, which you don't do. Start from Genesis and go all the way to Revelation. And don't do any of this eisegetical shit. Read it in context. Your religion is full of shit. And, I wasted 40 years in it or thereabouts. Oh, I know, Brian. I was reading the Bible in context in one of my Saturday live streams. And you know what a Christian told me? They were in my chat and they were like, no, you're taking it out of context. And I'm like, how am I taking it out of context? I'm reading the goddamn thing. Like reading it verse by verse. How is that taking it out of context? No, the Christians are the ones that always take the goddamn Bible out of context. And you say, well, you know what? The Bible says this. And then they're going to be like, no, it doesn't. And then you take them to the chapter and verse. And they're like, I didn't know that. Of course you didn't know that. You never read the damn book. You only read what your leaders tell you to read, or you only listen to what your leaders want you to hear. You don't know all of the crazy shit that is in that book. And yes, there is a lot of crazy shit in that book. You don't believe me? Read it. Genesis to Revelation. Don't skip a chapter. Do not skip a chapter. Read it chapter by chapter. Even a little bit by little bit if you have to. But read it in context. And I guarantee you, you will find that you have been lied to. You see, that's why I do what I do. Because I don't want someone devoting 40 years to a lie. I grew up in Christianity. And you know what? I cried. I cried when I finally came to the realization that I could not, in good conscience, follow the religion of Christianity anymore. I cried. Yeah, right, Robert. I think that's why the Catholic Church didn't have the Bible in the vernacular for so long. I think they knew. I think they knew that if people had the Bible in the vernacular, I think they knew it would have been very damaging to the religion. But aside from that, we've got, you know, people in the past, they most of them were illiterate. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, you know, especially in the past. Um, but but yeah, um, most of them were illiterate, so it wouldn't have mattered if the Bible had been in the vernacular or not. But pretty sure that's one reason the Catholic Church did not want the Bible translated into the vernacular. Because those who could read probably would have gotten out of the goddamn religion. That's my thought on the subject. Could be, couldn't be. I mean, you know, we don't know. That part is that part of the past is, you know, history. We don't have any records dating back to that. And even if we did, the Catholic Church would have burned those records, you know. No, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the Catholic Church burned a lot of documents that they did not agree with. And we lost a lot of knowledge, not just because of the Catholic Church, but because of wars. You know, the Library of Alexandria, there were papyri in the Library of Alexandria. We will never get back. We don't know what we lost in the Library of Alexandria because it burned down. You know, now at least it's like if you want knowledge, to a certain extent you can get it. I mean, there's, you know, certain things we don't know. All right, Brian. See you later. Um, but, you know, and until the information superhighway is destroyed, you know, uh, I mean, the governments, not just my government, but all governments, have to work really hard to keep top secret shit under wraps. You know? And it could be that I don't I don't expect English to be the franca lingua for all time. I don't expect that. Okay. There was a time when Egyptian was the franca lingua, and that fell by the wayside. And, you know, we couldn't even decipher hieroglyphs until someone found the Rosetta Stone. And then we worked from the Rosetta Stone and figured out the hieroglyphs from there. You know, um, so I figure as long as there's at least, I don't know, I don't know how many languages there are today. 200, over 200, I think. Um, so if at least a handful of those languages survive, then, you know, assuming humanity lasts another 1,000 years, we'll be okay. But please do not waste any more time. In that false religion. Now, I don't know whether there's a God or not. I don't. But I sure as hell know it's not the God of the Bible. Anyway, I'm sorry about um, not being here when I said I'd be here. My internet went down. And even if my internet hadn't gone down, I still probably wouldn't have been here, even although I probably would have let you know. Um, so anyway, so that's it for today. Please, if you would, give the video a like or a dislike if you want. Leave a comment down below. If you are financially secure and you would like to, you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of this channel. You can become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. I also have a Patreon. I don't have anything up on Patreon yet. That is because I don't have any patrons yet. As soon as I get about 5 patrons, I will start putting up content on Patreon. And as soon as I get 10 members, I will be doing members only live streams. If you do become a member, you have access to custom emojis, and you also have early access to my debunks. All right, guys. See you guys later. Thanks, Robert. You're so sweet. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.